Hey, Magic friends, welcome back. This is your captain speaking on Capnclyde's MTG spoilers for the last of Modern Horizon. That's right, guys, we got the last of our spoilers today. The whole set's revealed. So let's go through the last couple of cards and see if anything spicy came out. So, before we get started, guys, remember, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you see all these videos when they first come out, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about my thoughts, your thoughts, what you'd like me to talk about, anything else. We got to feed that little YouTube engine to get these videos pulled up on top for everybody to see. Appreciate the support. Also, in the description, you will see a link to my email where you can hit me up personally, or go to the eBay store where all the cards and everything I talk about will be posted from all my box videos and things like that. So don't forget, with Modern Horizons 2 coming up, that means more box opening videos and more cards to be posted on eBay. So with that said, guys, let's get down to business. So, cleared my throat for this one. So we have Sojourner's Companion, looks like. A 4/4 for 7 with affinity for artifacts and artifact land cycling. So it's a common. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but honestly, 7 mana for a 4/4, you could honestly probably cast this for free, even though it is a common. And a 4/4 for nothing is pretty hot. And artifact land cycling means that you can go fetch land with it. Even as a common, it seems pretty powerful. However, I don't think this is going to be real big um, in Modern unless that affinity deck really picks up. Draft's probably going to be good. I do think, however, this will probably be a thing in a lot of the EDH decks because there's an artifact land for every color, and this lets you basically go fetch it. So I think this is probably should have been an uncommon and not just a common. So moving on. Next, we have the Mirror Scrappling. For 1, we get a 1/1, and you can sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Not the best thing in the world. Probably won't see too much use in draft. Maybe it will. This might see modern play for the simple fact that um, you can sacrifice it to pump another creature, much like Arcbound Ravager. But late game, it's a really bad draw, but most things are in the Affinity deck. So we'll have to wait and see. As far as EDH goes, I just don't think this does enough to be an EDH card, but it could see modern play even as a common. Moving on, we have the Fodder Tosser. God, I love the name of this card. So for 3 colorless, you get an artifact that when you discard a card and tap it, it deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. So the greatest thing about this, even though it is a common, is it will enable all of those Madness Cause cards that are in this set and some from the past. So this may see a little EDH play, so you can kind of do some shenanigans with discarding. I don't think you'll see modern play because it's 3 mana. It only does 2 damage. It's not a whole lot. I think there's better ways and better cards to get a discard outlet. But in draft, this might be a thing. Just because there's not many ways to discard in draft. Plus, it does damage to players and planeswalkers. I mean, what more do you want in life? So, moving on. Next, we have the Wave Sifter. So, it's a blue-green 3 colorless for a 3/2. It flies, and when it enters the battlefield, you investigate twice. Seems awful. Now, however, it does invoke for a blue and 2 colorless. So, basically, for 2 mana, you can get two clue tokens, which means you could draw 2 cards later. So that might make it playable enough, but I really doubt it. Um, Definitely could see some EDH play, and this is going to be a draft all-star. However, draft colors of blue-green aren't too hot in this set from what I'm seeing. But this is a good card in its own way. But still, I don't think it's going to see modern play. Moving on, we have another common. We have the Jewel-Dyed Cobra for a green and 2. You get a 3/1 with Death Touch, which is pretty cool. When it dies, you create a treasure token. So it does give you a little bit of ramp when it dies. It does have Death Touch, so it can't kill anything. However, with 1 toughness, it dies to anything as well. Great draft card. No modern play, and probably no EDH play either. Move on to the next one. We have Flourishing Strike. So for a green and 1, you get an instant. You get to choose whether to do 5 damage to a creature with flying, or a creature gets +3/+3. Or you can entwine it for a mere cost of 5 mana and deal 5 damage to a flyer and give your creature +3/+3, and then punch somebody in the face, which is probably not going to happen because they're probably going to have a flyer, yada yada yada. Just a common. It's going to be a great utility card in draft. Won't see modern play and probably won't see EDH either. But it's a common. What do you expect? So another common understar. That means it's not an all-star. Um, it's a green and a colorless for an 0/3. When it enters the battlefield, put +1/+1 counter on target creature. Each creature you control, the +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Yeah, nothing better than laying a 1/4 trampler. This could be a thing in draft if you have a really big creature and you want to have this late game to give something trample maybe, but I don't see us doing anything in any format. Next here we have Crack Open. So for a green and 2 colorless, it says destroy target artifact or enchantment and create a treasure token. This is going to be great in this draft format because there's so many artifacts, plus the fact it gives you a treasure token to help you ramp with mana of any color. This is going to be an all-star in draft. Not going to see modern play because it's just too bad, costs too much, doesn't do enough. Could be a decent EDH card because of the treasure token ability, but there's probably actually better things for EDH. So next we have the Deepwood Denzin. So for green and 2 colorless, we get a 3/2 Vigilance. So not too shabby there. For a green and 5, you draw a card. Ability costs less. Costs 1 less for every to activate for each +1/+1 counter on creatures you control. So don't see this being a modern card, just because the +1/+1 counter things, not really a thing. And in decks that are, they combo, so they don't really care about drawing cards so much. Now EDHs could be a thing with a lot of +1/+1 counters and give you a lot of ability to draw. Plus the fact it has vigilance, like I mean, you can swing with it and then draw with it. In draft, it's probably going to be an all-star just because of the abilities it has. And it's really iffy with the EDH, but definitely not modern. But what do you guys want when you have nothing but commons getting previewed? So once again, we have another one, Bannerhide, Krusgo, or it's a Rhino. It's a Forest Rhino. Anyway, it's a green and 3 colorless for a 4/4 with Trample, which is a great rate. This would be a draft all-star for that. Not to mention the fact that it has Reinforce 2, which is for a green and a colorless, you can discard a card and put 2 counters on him. So he quickly becomes a 4/4, then a 6/6 Trampler, then an 8/8 Trampler, and so forth and so on. So have you. Also, too, he has Scavenge, which means you can put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to his power on target creature by playing 7 when he's in the graveyard. This thing, as a common, just does it all. It's that and a bag of chips for a draft. Modern, this is useless. Could be kind of cool in EDH depending on what you're doing, but I really don't think so. But what do you want from commons? Moving on, we have another common, the Viashino Lashclaw. So red and colorless for a 2/2. Discard a card by tapping it. Creatures you control gain haste at the end of turn. Probably decent in a draft if you get some madness stuff. Will not be a modern card and probably not even an EDH card. So moving right along. We have another common. So red, black, 2 colorless, destroy target creature. Now this is going to be a draft all-star just because it says destroy target creature for 4. Plus it has the madness ability, so if you discard it for a black and a red, you can cast it. Which also means you could even make this an instant speed ability if you have something to make you discard in your opponent's turn. So there's a lot of flexibility here. I don't see this being a thing in modern just because there's not a madness theme in modern. It could be a good removal for the madness deck if something does ever come of it. It could be a pretty neat card for these kind of abilities in EDH just because it's another way to destroy a creature. Plus it has madness. So, if you like to play against people who play things like Tiny Bones, Trinket Thief, and stuff like that, make you discard all the time, this would be a really sweet card to be like, oh yeah, I'll discard a card, blow up your stuff. So there's some potential here, but mainly just a draft all-star. Moving on, we have Unholy Heat, or Holy Heat. Hot. Anyway, so for red, it's an instant, deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. For delirium, it does 6. So this has serious draft potential. Just because 6 damage for 1 red as an instant speed is nuts. Getting delirium may be kind of hard. It does do 2 regardless. So draft all-star. Not gonna see modern plays. It doesn't target the players. And I don't think it's gonna see EDH play because there's just better things out there that don't have these big restrictions on them. So Next, we have Storm God's Oracle. This is pretty cool. Red, blue, and a colorless for a 1/3. It's a human shaman. Interesting. It is an enchantment creature. For 1, and notice it's not tapping, you can just do it. You can give it +1, -1 to end of turn, so you could technically make it a 3/1. And if it dies, it deals 3 damage to any target. So definite draft all-star, because not only can you do like 3 damage to something, when it dies, you can do another 3 damage. So you can kill a 6/6 with it. Also, too, even if they do block it, you can make it die so that the 3 damage goes across regardless. 3 mana, way too high for the kind of stuff that's happening in Modern right now, or or at any time, honestly. Um, may see some EDH play, just as some shenanigans stuff, but I don't really see a big deal with it. So just another common, guys. Sorry. And another common, it's a lightning spear. It's equipment. You get +1 and trample. You can sacrifice it, have it deal 3 damage to any target, and equips for 1. Um, Decent in draft. Will never see modern play, and probably won't even see EDH play, to be honest with you. Because 5 mana for 3 damage is just not what people are looking for. So here we have Mind Collapse, another common. So red and 3 colorless. If it's your turn, you can sacrifice a mountain rather than pay its cost, though, and it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So this will definitely see draft play. Maybe even EDH, just because of the ability to sacrifice a mountain. But I don't think it's going to see modern play. Maybe some sideboard play if you need that kind of ability to tap tap your mana for red and then sacrifice the mountain to Mind Collapse and blow up a big thing that's in the way, and then use the mana to cast another sorcery for your prowess deck. So maybe. I wouldn't count this out as sideboards, so it's okay for a common. This common's the Foundry Helix. It's a white, red, and a colorless. Additional cast of this spell, you sacrifice a permanent. Deals 4 damage to any target. If you sacrifice a permanent that was an artifact, you gain 4. This is going to be really sweet in draft. For what it does, costs way too much mana. In Modern, it probably won't be a thing in EDH either, unless you have some weird sacrifice style deck and you're looking for more things to sacrifice things to. So, moving on. Mount Voluous Manticore. Interesting. So for 2 red and 2, you get 3/4, another common. At the beginning of your combat, you may discard a card. When you do, it deals X damage to any creature, where X is the number of card types that discarded card has. So this is probably not going to be a thing. 4 mana for 3/4 is not great already. This could be okay in draft. Definitely not modern. Could be a thing in EDH depending on how you build your deck if you want to abuse that card type thing. But I honestly don't see it being a big deal. So moving right along. Revolutionists. So for red and 5, you get a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from graveyard to your hand. It has Madness of 4, which is pretty sweet. Don't think this is going to see modern play. Just all the stuff on here costs way too much. Probably could be a really sweet EDH card. A creature with a way to get stuff out of the graveyard. And probably definitely a good draft all-star, just because of its ability to pick things up out of the graveyard. Moving on, another common, Smell Fear. I'm pretty sure it's not fear that they're smelling from that guy. It's probably a number 2. But anyway, so we got 1 green and a colorless. It says Proliferate. Target creature you control fights up to another creature you don't control. So draft all-star. Fight cards in draft. Anything that resembles removal, all-star in draft. Plus, Proliferate could make a card big enough to live. Also, this won't see modern play because this is not the kind of stuff that you use in modern. There are better things to do with your mana, especially in green, red, /green, black, or so forth and so on. Maybe EDH, but I seriously doubt it. So, just another decent draft common. Moving on, we have Dihada's Ploy. So, black, red, colorless, instant, draw 2 cards, discard a card. You gain life equal to the number of cards you've discarded this turn. Has Jumpstart. Again, probably a draft card. It's going to be really good. Won't see modern play. Maybe EDH if you have a deck that really needs something like this, but I wouldn't count on that too much. Just another good draft common. Speaking of good draft commons, you have the Parcel Mirror. It's a blue and a colorless for a 2/1. And for 2 mana, you can sacrifice it to draw a card. Great draft card. Modern? No way. Doesn't do enough. EDH? Probably no also. So, moving on. We have Recalibrate. So blue and a colorless for this common. It says return target creature to its owner's hands. If you discard a card this turn, you draw a card. Definitely draft All-Star. Not going to be something you're going to see in Modern. Just way too many weird conditions to get the most use out of it. EDH, probably not either. There's just better things you could do. So, just another good draft common. Speaking of good draft commons, here we have it, the Disciple of the Sun. A white and 4 colors for a 3/3, which isn't really good on rate, but it does have lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, you can return a target permanent card, mana value 3 or less, from your graveyard to your hand. So in draft, this is the bomb, especially if you got some good 3 below hitting cards. Plus, it's got lifelink, it's just, and it says permanent, so you could pick up like enchantment spells, maybe even living weapons and equipment, so forth and so on. 5 mana is way too much for Modern, and probably too much for EDH too, considering what this thing does. So, moving right along, just another good draft common. So, in this draft common, we have Fairgrounds Patrol for a white and colorless. It's 2/1. And it says for white and colorless, you can exile a patrol from your graveyard to create a 1/1 colorless Slaughter artifact creature token with flying. Activate only as a sorcery. So, doesn't do enough to be a good modern card. Be great in draft. 2 creatures for 1. That's always sweet. Because the Thopter has flying, it's always good to have the evasion. It may even be a decent card in EDH depending on what you're looking for. Moving on, we have our next common, the Arcbound Prototype. So this one has, for 2 mana, it's a modular 2, so basically a 2/2. That when it dies, you move the counters around. So, good draft common. That's the end of this story. Moving right along, we have another draft common, the Cabal Initiate. So for a black and a colorless, you get a 2/1. You can discard a card, it gains a lifelink till the end of turn. Once you hit Threshold, though, it becomes a 3/3. Threshold is when you have 7 more cards in your graveyard. This is going to be great for draft just because it gets a little bigger toward the end of the game. It doesn't do enough for EDH and definitely doesn't do enough for Modern, so that's probably at the end of this. Moving on to the next common, Glint Blade Prowler. So for a black and 2, you get a 2/3. For 1, you can tap it, pay a life, draw a card, activate this ability only if you discarded a card this turn. That's really a bad card. I don't even think that's even playable in draft unless you've got a discard deck. Yeah, that's just bad all around. So moving right along. Alright, we finally have something that looks reasonably good. It's a rare. Oh my god. It's Resurgent Belief. And it is a no casting cost card with suspend 2. So for a white and colors, you can suspend it for 2. And when it comes off suspend, return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. This thing has tons of potential to be busted. It might even be good in draft, depending on what kind of enchantments you have. Could be great in Modern if that enchantment deck that you're trying to push with this set is something worthwhile, because all those enchantments hitting the battlefield at one time could really just explode the format and win you the game. And this is definitely an EDH card. I mean, all the enchantment cards and stuff that are in people's people using their graveyards and stuff. If you build an enchantment deck, this is just a must-have. Easily $5-10 rare, in my personal opinion. For EDH, if not Modern. If Modern finds a way to break it, it could be God knows how much. So, next we have Guardian Kirin. Back to the commons again, guys. White and 3 for a 2/3 flyer that whenever a creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Guardian Kirin. Great draft card. Really can get big quick by chump blocking and so forth and so on. Way too much for Modern, and probably not going to see EDH play either. Moving right along, we have the Tizerius Charger. It's a black and 2 for a 3/2 creature. That's okay for draft. For 5, you can escape it by removing 5 cards from your graveyard. If it escapes with a +1/+1 counter or flying. So once again, this is a great draft card, but that's probably the only place you're going to be seeing this get played. Next, we have the Nested Shambler. It's a 1 black 1/1. When it dies, you create X tapped 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens, where X is the Nested Shambler's power. I don't know how that makes any sense. Oh, there's squirrels on the dead guy. That's how it makes sense. I guess they're nesting in the corpse. So this is not going to be playable in anything. If there's a weird squirrel deck, this might be a thing. If there's some way to pump this guy before he dies or something weird. But probably not going to see any play really in anything, honestly. It's decent draft common just because it can chump block twice. So, Next, we have the Knight in Mirror. So for a white and 2 colorless, you get a 2/2. For a white and 2 colors, you can adapt it, which is if there's no +1/+1 counters on it, you can put a counter on it. If one or more +1/+1 counters are on the knight, it gains double strike till the end of the turn. So that's pretty sweet. Again, great draft card. Doesn't do enough for Modern and probably not for EDH or Commander either. Moving on to the next common. So white and 2 colors for a flyer. That's 2/2. It gets, and you can pump its butt for a 1 white. Again, maybe decent in draft, but nothing else is going to use this thing. Just another draft common. And for this draft common, we have the Lonesome Curator. So for black and 4, you get a 5/4 common with an exploit, which means you sacrifice a creature when it comes into play if you want. It does have menace, so that's pretty cool. When you sacrifice a creature, you destroy target creature you don't control with mana value 3 or less. That's really restrictive. Could be good in draft. I mean, 5 mana for a 5/4 menace is always great in draft. You don't have to exploit things if you don't want to. Modern EDH, nah, nothing. So here we have the Hell Mongrel for a black and 3. You get a 4/3, not too shabby. You can discard a card. It gets a +1/+1 at the end of turn. Plus it has madness. So good draft common as far as this thing's going. Next we have Piercing Ray. So white and 2 colorless to exile target tapped creature. It does have forecast though, which for 3 mana you can reveal it from your hand to actually tap an untapped creature. You only do this during your upkeep and only once each turn. So for 5 mana, technically you can kill anything. However, it is a sorcery, so you will have to take a hit if you don't tap it yourself. I guess it's fine for draft. That's the only place it's going to be fine. Next, we have the Foul Watcher. So we have a blue and 1 colorless for a 1/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1, which is kind of cool. Once you get Delirium, it becomes a 2/2, which is 4 more cards of different types in your graveyard. It's a common. Decent in draft. Probably about as far as that's going to go, though. Next, we have Tragic Fall common. Whoops. My bad, guys. My bad. Need to scoot that back a little bit there. So, Tragic Fall common. We have black and a colorless. Target creature gets -3/-3 to end of turn. If you're hellbent, creature gets -13/-13, which means you have no cards in hand. This is a great removal spell for draft. That's probably the only place it's going to be played because -13/13 doesn't really do a whole lot in most formats. It probably might see some EDH play just because if you're hellbent, you can kill some big things with this. That's probably about as far as this is going to go. There's just other cards that do better things. So moving right along, we have the Vermin Gorger. This is a black and 1 for a 2/2 vampire that you can tap, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So, draft, modern, nope. Commander EDH Singleton, oh yeah. Like 2-headed giant, you name it. It says each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So, I mean, you only gain 2 life, but each opponent loses 2 life. Like, you could literally just, like, tap this, sack a creature, and, like, shock the whole table you're playing with. Now, it's probably going to get you killed, but those are the kind of shenanigans I like. Just making people mad. So, moving right along. Next, we have another common, the Ethereum Spinner. Blue 2 colors for 2/1. Whenever you cast a spell, mana value 4 or greater, create a 1/1 colorless stopper artifact creature token with flying. So good with draft. Just because of the ability to make 1/1s forever once you start casting 4 casting cost stuff. It won't see modern play because 4 mana is just not a plethora of stuff you have in your deck that costs 4 mana. Most stuff is always 3 or less. For EDH, this looks like a powerhouse because there's always stuff getting cast for 4 or more in EDH. Like you could build small armies. It says whenever you do it. So like if you like ramp up and just like cast 3 or 4 spells at a time, or if you cast an instant spell that's 4 or more, you get 1/1 Thoppers to block with. Like this seems like it should have been an uncommon because it just seems really good. I mean now in the modern setting, it's a common obviously, but I mean overall it's got some serious potential, guys. So you EDH players might want to keep an eye on this one. So Burton Aerialist. So for 2 and a blue, you get a 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Whenever you sacrifice a token, the Aerialist gains flying till end of turn. That's very interesting. It's going to be okay in draft. Modern, this is awful. And even in EDH, this is not good. So I just don't see it being a thing. Moving right along. We have the Gorge Zlot. So for a red and 3, we have a common that's a 4/3. It has reach, which is why we were giving red stuff reach again. I don't know, but so moving on. If it has Delirium, the Zlot attacks if there are 4 or more cards in your graveyard. Blah blah blah. Just like what Delirium says. It deals 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You slap a Death Touch on this boy, and or maybe you slap on what's that collar? There's a collar that gives Death Touch. So like you give him Death Touch, and then you swing. He deals damage to all the creatures the defending player controls. They all die from Death Touch. Like EDH, here he comes. Yeah, guys, if you have a Death Touch deck that gives things Death Touch, you want this dude right here. He's your boy, because he's going to destroy any blockers that are in your way before he ever gets a chance to be blocked. So yeah, there's some shenanigans that I like. That's good stuff. So moving right along. Another common Arcbound Tracker. We have a red and 2 for a modular 2, so a 2/2 creature with menace. It's not too bad. Whenever you cast a spell other than your first spell each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So that's a very powerful draft card because you casting 2 spells a turn, this thing can get big quick. Plus it has modulars, which means all those counters will go to something when it does die. Yeah, this could definitely easily be an EDH card as well. However, because of the mana cost and the things that you have to do for this, this is probably not going to be a modern card in any stretch of the imagination, especially for red. So, moving right along, we have the Soul of Migration for 2 white and 5. You have a 2/4 flyer. When the Soul of Migration enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. It also has the ability to be invoked for 4. It is white, so if you end up with some kind of blink ability like an Ephemerate and you draft a whole bunch of these evoke things, you can really do some damage to somebody because you just make their life really suck by just like pumping all this stuff out. But for this kind of mana, I mean, it's barely draft playable. Because 4 mana for 2 1/1 birds are just not good enough. So you'd have to play it for 7 or something, and definitely you're not gonna see this in modern. And EDH got a lot better things to do for 7, for the love of God. If you don't have something better to do for this than 7 playing Commander, you need to rethink your deck. So, yeah, that's about how that goes. So with that said, guys, that's the last spoilers. All of Modern Horizon has been spoiled. Unfortunately, they left us nothing but common cards at the end. I hate it when they do that because it's very anticlimactic. But there was one rare spoiled, so I guess we can appreciate that. Again, guys, I thank you for your time. Thanks for watching the video. And as always, let's get out to the local LGSs. It's almost time for Modern Horizons next weekend to come out. Let's get out there and do them pre-releases. The local LGSs are having events now. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to be actually trying to video my pre-release of me opening my pre-release pack so you guys can see what you can expect on your pre-release or not expect or what have you. And with that said, guys, always go out there, go to your local LGS, support your local vendors or whoever it is who's giving your cards. Support them local, small town guys. And as always, let's make Magic a funner place to be and try to enjoy this game, guys. So until next time, remember to be kind. This is your captain speaking, and I'll see you at the pre-release.